Welcome to another deep dive investigation with American Scandal Report by Skoob. I'm your host, Oz Dalton, and today we're pulling back the curtain on one of hip hop's most powerful figures, Sean Diddy Combs. What you're about to hear isn't just another celebrity scandal story. This is the unraveling of an empire, the exposure of decades long patterns of alleged abuse, and the dramatic fall from grace of a man who once seemed untouchable. From glittering white parties in the Hamptons to federal courtrooms, from chart-topping hits to criminal enterprises, this is a story that spans over 2 decades of alleged criminality, hidden behind the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry. So grab your headphones, settle in, because we're about to journey through the shadows of fame, power, and the devastating consequences when both go unchecked. Let's start where the mystique began. 1998, the Hamptons. Picture this. A young black mogul throwing what would become one of America's most coveted parties. The all-white dress code wasn't just a fashion statement, it was a declaration. Diddy's white party wasn't just an event, it was a cultural phenomenon that redefined what celebration looked like in America. These weren't your typical industry gatherings. We're talking about extravagance on a level that made The Great Gatsby look modest. Lavish settings, celebrity-packed guest lists, that read like a who's who of entertainment, and meticulous design that left nothing to chance. Every detail was crafted to perfection, every moment Instagram-worthy before Instagram even existed. But here's what made these parties truly significant. They represented something much bigger than just wealth display. This was hip-hop's version of high society. A young black entrepreneur creating space in circles that had historically excluded people who looked like him. The white party challenged social boundaries, broke down walls, and for many embodied the ultimate success story of ambition meeting opportunity. For guests attending meant you'd made it. For Diddy, hosting meant he was reshaping not just hip-hop culture, but American celebration itself. The party symbolized everything he claimed to represent: ambition, wealth, reinvention, and living large without apology. But as we'll discover throughout this investigation, sometimes the most beautiful facades hide the darkest secrets. These parties, these symbols of success and breakthrough, they may have been masking something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The white party era established Diddy as more than just a music producer or rapper. He became a lifestyle brand, a symbol of aspiration. Everyone wanted to be him, be with him, or at minimum, be invited to his table. This cultural cachet, this untouchable status he cultivated, it would later become both his shield and ultimately his downfall. Now, while those white parties were building his legend, there were already signs that Diddy's world operated by different rules than the rest of us. Let's travel back to 1999, a year that should have cemented his status as hip-hop royalty, but instead introduced us to a pattern that would haunt his career for decades. The nightclub shooting trial of 1999 wasn't just another celebrity legal drama. It was our first real glimpse into how power and privilege could seemingly bend the justice system. Here's what happened. Shots fired, people injured, lives forever changed. When the dust settled and the courtroom drama ended, Shine, someone many viewed as being in Diddy's orbit, served years behind bars. Diddy? He walked free. Now, I'm not here to retry a case that's been adjudicated. But let's talk about what this incident represented in the broader narrative. For many observers, this wasn't just about guilt or innocence in a legal sense. It was about accountability, about consequences, and about whether fame and fortune could shield someone from facing the music when things go wrong. The rumors that swirled around this case weren't just gossip. They were the beginning of a narrative that would follow Diddy for the next 2 decades. People began whispering about untouchable status, about power protecting power, about a system that worked differently for different people. This incident established something crucial in the Diddy story. The idea that he existed in a space where normal rules might not apply. Whether that was true or not, the perception was taking root. And in the court of public opinion, perception often becomes reality. What's particularly significant about this moment is how it foreshadowed everything that would come later. The questions of accountability, the speculation about behind-the-scenes influence, the sense that there were layers to these stories that the public wasn't seeing. All of these themes that would explode into full view decades later were already present in 1999. Looking back now, with everything we know about the allegations that would eventually surface, this incident reads less like an isolated legal problem and more like the first visible crack in a facade that was already under tremendous pressure. Fast forward to 2023, and the dam finally burst. If the white parties represented Diddy's public face, and the 1999 trial hinted at his shadow side, Cassie's lawsuit was the earthquake that brought down the entire carefully constructed image. For years, Cassie Ventura represented the perfect complement to Diddy's empire. She was the talented artist, the beautiful partner, the symbol of his ability to nurture both business and personal relationships. Their connection seemed to embody everything aspirational about his brand, professional success intertwined with personal fulfillment. But in 2023, that narrative exploded. Cassie's abuse allegations didn't just accuse Diddy of wrongdoing, they painted a picture of systematic, prolonged abuse hidden behind the glittering facade we'd all been seeing for years. These weren't simple relationship disputes or creative differences. These were accusations of serious, sustained abuse that allegedly occurred while the world saw only success and glamour. The timing of these revelations was particularly devastating. Here was someone who had been intimately connected to Diddy's world for years, someone who understood the inner workings of his empire, coming forward with detailed, specific allegations about what life was really like behind the scenes. What made Cassie's allegations so powerful wasn't just their severity, it was their specificity. These weren't vague accusations or decades-old memories. These were detailed accounts from someone who had been at the center of Diddy's world during some of his most successful years. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. The entertainment industry, which had long celebrated Diddy as a trailblazer and mogul, suddenly had to grapple with the possibility that they had been enabling and celebrating someone who was allegedly using his power to harm others. But Cassie's lawsuit wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. Her courage in coming forward seemed to open floodgates, giving others the strength to share their own stories. What started as one woman's allegations quickly became part of a much larger, more disturbing pattern. Once Cassie broke the silence, it was as if a dam had burst. Suddenly, others who had allegedly suffered in silence found their voices. The Adult Survivors Act provided a legal pathway, but it was Cassie's courage that seemed to provide the emotional catalyst for what would become an avalanche of accusations. Joy Dickerson-Neal came forward with allegations dating back to 1991, claims of being drugged and assaulted that painted a picture of predatory behavior spanning decades. These weren't recent allegations or heat-of-the-moment accusations. These were claims about systematic abuse going back to the very beginning of Diddy's rise to power. Then came Jane Doe's allegations from 2003, accusations of trafficking and rape involving someone who was allegedly just 17 years old at the time. The specificity and severity of these claims began painting a picture of not just individual incidents, but of a pattern of exploitation that allegedly targeted some of the most vulnerable. Crystal McKinney and April Lampros joined the growing list of accusers, each adding their voices to what was becoming a chorus of allegations. But perhaps one of the most significant additions was Dawn Richards' lawsuit. Richard wasn't just another accuser. She was someone from inside the industry who claimed to have witnessed abuse toward both Cassie and Kim Porter. Her allegations suggested that what we were seeing wasn't just a series of isolated incidents, but part of a culture of abuse that allegedly permeated Diddy's entire organization. The lawsuits began revealing allegations of violence, exploitation, and what prosecutors would later characterize as drug-fueled parties that allegedly involved underage participants. We're talking about more than 24 lawsuits, each adding pieces to a puzzle that portrayed an empire allegedly built on fear, control, and unchecked power. But the accusers weren't just targeting Diddy himself. The lawsuits began implicating his inner circle, including allegations against his son Christian Combs for the alleged assault of a yacht worker. This suggested that the allegedly toxic environment wasn't limited to Diddy alone, but had potentially infected his entire family and business organization. While the civil lawsuits were building public pressure, something much more serious was happening behind the scenes. The Department of Homeland Security wasn't just watching these allegations unfold. They were building their own case. The federal investigation painted a picture that went far beyond individual civil disputes. According to prosecutors, this wasn't just about personal misconduct. This was about a criminal enterprise. They alleged that Diddy had operated a long-running organization built on abuse, trafficking, and intimidation, with employees and associates actively helping to conceal violent behavior. This is where the story shifts from celebrity scandal to serious federal crime. The government wasn't just looking at individual incidents. they were treating Bad Boy Records itself as potentially a criminal enterprise under RICO statutes. For those unfamiliar, RICO laws were originally designed to prosecute organized crime families. The fact that they were being applied to Diddy's business empire suggested prosecutors believed they were dealing with systematic organized criminal activity. The federal investigation portrayed Diddy not just as someone who had made mistakes or poor choices, but as a manipulative figure who allegedly exploited women, artists, and even friends to secure wealth and power. This wasn't about isolated incidents of bad judgment. This was about allegedly using his entire business operation as a vehicle for criminal activity. The scope of the investigation was staggering. Federal agents conducted raids on multiple properties, and what they allegedly found supported the prosecutor's narrative of systematic corruption. We're talking about weapons, drugs, and what investigators characterized as evidence of the criminal enterprise they had been building their case around. These weren't state charges or civil lawsuits that might result in financial settlements. These were federal criminal charges that could result in decades in prison. The government was essentially alleging that one of hip-hop's most successful moguls had been running a criminal organization disguised as an entertainment empire. As the federal investigation intensified, digital evidence began emerging that prosecutors claimed corroborated the allegations. We're talking about videos that allegedly showed victims being coerced into sex acts, digital trails that supposedly documented systematic abuse, and communications that allegedly revealed the inner workings of what prosecutors characterized as a criminal enterprise. This digital evidence was particularly damaging because it allegedly provided concrete proof of claims that might otherwise have been dismissed as he said, she said disputes. Videos don't lie, digital communications create permanent records, and electronic evidence can corroborate witness testimony in ways that make cases much stronger. The impact on Diddy's reputation was immediate and devastating. Someone who had once been celebrated as a trailblazer and visionary suddenly became radioactive in the industry. Celebrities who had once clamored for invitations to his parties began distancing themselves. Business partners started severing ties. The entertainment industry, which had long embraced Diddy as one of its most successful figures, suddenly wanted nothing to do with him. But the digital evidence wasn't just damaging Diddy's reputation. It was allegedly providing prosecutors with the concrete proof they needed to build their criminal case. Former producer Rodney Lil Rod Jones came forward with his own allegations of harassment and exploitation, claiming he had documented incriminating evidence while working closely with Diddy's organization. Jones's allegations were particularly significant because he wasn't just a victim making accusations. He was someone who claimed to have been systematically documenting what he witnessed while working inside Diddy's organization. His lawsuit alleged drug-fueled exploitation and coercion, but more importantly, it claimed to have evidence backing up these allegations. The pattern that emerged from all this evidence was allegedly one of predation, intimidation, and abuse spanning years. This wasn't just implicating Diddy alone. It was painting a picture of an entire organizational culture that allegedly enabled and participated in systematic misconduct. One of the most disturbing aspects of the emerging allegations was how they allegedly implicated not just Diddy, but his entire inner circle. The lawsuits painted a picture of what prosecutors characterized as a deranged family environment marked by excess, aggression, and complete disregard for safety. The allegations against Christian Combs for the alleged assault of a yacht worker were particularly significant because they suggested that the allegedly toxic culture wasn't limited to Diddy alone. If these allegations were true, it meant that the next generation was potentially being raised in and perpetuating the same allegedly abusive patterns. But it wasn't just family members who were allegedly involved. The federal investigation portrayed Diddy's employees and associates as actively participating in what prosecutors characterized as criminal activity. We're talking about allegations that people throughout his organization were procuring women, obtaining narcotics, and actively concealing crimes. This paints a picture of systematic corruption that allegedly went far beyond one individual's misconduct. According to prosecutors, this was an organization where allegedly criminal behavior wasn't just tolerated, it was facilitated, enabled, and covered up by people throughout the hierarchy. The allegations about witnesses to abuse toward both Cassie and Kim Porter were particularly damning because they suggested that people close to Diddy allegedly knew what was happening and did nothing to stop it. In some cases, the allegations suggested that people in his organization were actively participating in creating conditions that enabled abuse. This organizational aspect of the allegations is what transformed the case from individual misconduct to federal RICO charges. Prosecutors weren't just alleging that Diddy had committed crimes, they were alleging that he had created and operated a criminal organization disguised as an entertainment empire. The federal charges against Diddy represent a dramatic escalation that few saw coming, even as the civil lawsuits were piling up. When prosecutors decided to pursue RICO charges, they were essentially arguing that Bad Boy Records wasn't just a music label that had some problems, it was a criminal enterprise that used the music business as a front for systematic illegal activity. RICO cases are incredibly serious. These are the laws that brought down organized crime families, and prosecutors don't use them lightly. The fact that they chose this approach suggests they believed they had evidence of organized, systematic criminal activity involving multiple people over an extended period. The indictment detailed what prosecutors characterized as a pattern of coercion, violence, and drug use spanning years. But more importantly, it alleged that Diddy's associates were actively enabling his conduct by procuring women, obtaining narcotics, and concealing crimes. This wasn't just about individual bad acts. This was about an allegedly criminal organization. The raids on Diddy's properties yielded what investigators characterized as supporting evidence for their criminal enterprise theory. Weapons and drugs were allegedly discovered, reinforcing claims of systematic corruption that went far beyond typical celebrity excess. These federal charges mark a turning point in how we understand the entire Diddy story. Everything we thought we knew about his empire, the music, the parties, the business success, was now being reframed by prosecutors as potentially part of a criminal organization designed to facilitate abuse, trafficking, and exploitation. The scope of the federal case suggests that prosecutors believe they can prove not just that crimes occurred, but that Diddy orchestrated organized, predatory criminal activity over an extended period. If they're successful, this won't just be about individual accountability, it will be about dismantling what they characterize as a criminal organization that happened to operate in the entertainment industry. As we close our investigation into the Diddy allegations, remember, this isn't just the story of one man's rise and potential fall. It's a window into how power, fame, and unchecked privilege can allegedly mask years of abuse. From the iconic white parties to federal courtrooms, what seemed like a celebration of success now faces allegations of systematic exploitation. Brave survivors have come forward, triggering a federal reckoning not just with one figure, but with an industry that may have looked the other way for decades. The question now isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about what kind of culture allowed this to happen. Want to hear more about what's still unfolding behind the scenes? Download the Skoob app now to access the full story and uncover what the headlines aren't telling you. This is Oz Dalton with American Scandal Report by Skoob signing off.